today's online and accessible world, people are able to falsify bank statements, and identity theft is a very real problem. This is why TPN is proud to present verified online bank statements, where bank statements are requested directly from your client's bank and delivered to you on TPN's secure platform. This check allows you to verify the applicant's actual income, verify the applicant's actual expenditure, prevent identity and documentation fraud, and provides convenience to applicants. Typically, you would request the applicant to provide supporting documentation, but TPN now provides a solution that allows you to do a full identity verification with the latest biometric technology. This enables you to request their bank statements directly from the source. Let's get back to reality. Michelle, how do you do this on the TPN system?
Rowan, it's as easy as ticking a box. Step 1, enter your consumer details. Step 2, verify income directly with bank. So once you have completed the process, the applicant will receive an SMS asking him or her to verify biometrics as well as consent to their bank details being shared.
Log on to TPN Credit Bureau to verify your applicants today. Another simple process that provides better data to make better decisions. Hi there. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to another special session with TPN Credit Bureau. We will start shortly, but first let's get you properly set up to maximize your experience. Remember to log into YouTube to access the live chat. This will allow you to join the conversation live and ask those pressing questions. The feedback forms will also be posted in the live chat for you to access. In the meantime, if the video is looking a bit blurry, click on the cog at the bottom right of the screen and choose 720p or higher. Lastly, but important to continuously improve your experience, your feedback. Feedback forms will be posted during our Q&A session, so please feel free to provide your feedback on the webinar, and if you have any future topics you would like us to cover. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and by clicking the bell icon, you'll be notified of our latest content, webinars, and training videos. That about wraps up housekeeping from our side. The session will start shortly. In today's online and accessible world, people are able to falsify bank statements, and identity theft is a very real problem. This is why TPN is proud to present verified online bank statements, where bank statements are requested directly from your client's bank and delivered to you on TPN's secure platform. This check allows you to verify the applicant's actual income, verify the applicant's actual expenditure, prevent identity and documentation fraud, and provides convenience to applicants. Typically, you would request the applicant to provide supporting documentation, but TPN now provides a solution that allows you to do a full identity verification with the latest biometric technology. This enables you to request their bank statements directly from the source. Let's get back to reality. Michelle, how do you do this on the TPN system?
Rowan, it's as easy as ticking a box. Step 1, enter your consumer details. Step 2, verify income directly with bank. So once you have completed the process, the applicant will receive an SMS asking him or her to verify biometrics as well as consent to their bank details being shared.
Log on to TPN Credit Bureau to verify your applicants today. Another simple process that provides better data to make better decisions.
Good morning everyone and welcome to another webinar from TPN Credit Bureau. Today we're going to be talking about the exciting topic of FICA and fraud prevention. With me today on the couch is Voldy Marcus, our Head of Marketing and Head of Sales at TPN, and also Shanaz Trithui, the COO of Comcorp. Welcome Shanaz, welcome Voldy.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Shanaz, just for those at home that don't know who you are and don't know who Comcorp is, would you like to just tell the people a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you became COO of Comcorp?
Oh, perfect. Thanks firstly, everyone, for having me. I'm super excited to be here. So I guess most people out there would know Comcorp in terms of the products that are out there more so than the name. Whether it's the biometric identification tools that you find embedded in your app, in a banking app, certainly Curator from a TPN Credit Bureau perspective, that comes from our technology and pioneering and innovating that software, and certainly from a mortgage origination perspective. The story, we all have great stories, Greg. So 29 years ago, it was as simple as a human being going, I do not like going from bank to bank to bank in order to submit my documents. And it was pioneered by Paul Moss 29 years ago to say, let's create and innovate a software that allows that aggregation and integration. So many people would be familiar, and as a human, I guess Shanaz likes knowing that we do good business.
Yep.
And as a human, I like knowing that what we do every day is easy. And that is obvious to end up at a place like Comcorp, who authenticates and makes business easy. Yeah.
So just before we get a little bit more into the meat of what we're talking about today, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the chat on YouTube. I have my laptop here in front of me, so I'll be receiving those questions live into the studio, and then we'll be able to ask them to our panelists here today. So please don't be shy. Send us as many questions as you would like to answer. There will be a formal Q&A towards the end of the session as well. So if your question doesn't get answered through the course of our discussion, it should be answered at the end of the session. So just to give a little bit of an overview of FICA as a whole. So FICA was introduced originally in 2001, and it was brought in to prevent crimes like money laundering, corruption, tax evasion, and fraud. And I think we're going to be focusing primarily on the fraud aspects of FICA today. But when FICA was introduced in 2001, it was more of a checkbox exercise. So you were told, these are the documents that you have to collect, you ticked your boxes, and that was that all finished. This changed significantly in 2017 with the introduction of a FICA Amendment Act. So for those that don't know, Financial Intelligence Center Act is FICA. The FICA was amended in 2017 and it introduced more of a risk-based approach. Basically what that meant is that ticking your boxes was no longer all that mattered. Now the risk fell on you as an agency or accountable institution, as they introduced, to actually take proactive steps to counteract these crimes that were involved, and you had to do a little bit more thinking than just checking a box. So TPN at the time introduced a variety of documentation that would be able to help you with that, and that documentation is regularly updated. They've all been updated in the last couple of months. And then from 2017, we now get to now, where we're getting to the point of taking the human interaction and human error out of it by providing you with the best possible software to actually do your FICA prevention, so your FICA fraud prevention through a system. Voldy, I think from your side, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the information that we have currently available with TPN from a check point of view?
So, you know, we start off discussing this whole concept of FICA, and most of the viewers today is sitting there and saying, I've heard this, there is, you know, I get the ID, I get the proof of residence, I get the bank statements, but spending time with a lot of these property professionals and viewers, it takes a huge amount of time. It's time consuming, and it's emails backwards and forwards, and then you get the ID, but it's only the one side of the card that's scanned, and it's too dark, it's too light, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there and saying, the bank statements, are they right? And this causes frustration, but also inefficiencies in the system. Yeah. And this inefficiencies is what we put as one of our objectives in saying, how do we make it easier? And working with ComCorp for quite a few years, it is what we strive to do, is to make it easier for our clients and for their clients. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's me receiving emails from my bank, which is a legal requirement that I need to upload X, Y, Z, and I say, but yes, they have it, why do I need to do it? And it brings us to a topic that we'll be discussing a little bit later, is this grey listing and how it's impacting on the South African economy, but we're going to bring it down a little bit to say, how does it impact on the real estate market? And we'll be touching on that a bit later. But the products we brought to market was, originally everyone knows the ID verification with photo, and that we pull from golden sources, and we have these various checks to make sure that the person is real that you deal with. But as fraudsters get smarter with access to better technology, they've got a place, but we need to keep up. And we not need to just keep up, we need to stay ahead of that curve. And that's what made our interaction with ComCorp and the technology that you provide so exciting. And we introduced Curata, which is the ID Biometrics. And we believe in the product so much that we actually using it to verify our own clients. As a credit bureau, we have an obligation and a legal requirement to kind of vet everyone that signs up on the credit bureau, because you have access to people's information. And we use this Curata for every single person that signs up to ensure that the person is real. And I might be jumping ahead, but this is one of the stories we love to share is that we had someone applying for account with TPN. And I think we shared it with you, Shanaz, as it happened. And we're sitting there and this thing came back failed, and what we get is we get what the image we receive from the golden source, and then we receive the image that was taken. And here was a guy sitting with a printed photo A4 in front of the camera trying to make it work, and it came back as failed, obviously. And you think that, all right, at least they're trying to do this, but the technology is so advanced that you can't fool it with a high resolution, very well printed photo, I might add, sitting there. And it's these type of things that we bring to the market for the reason to prevent this type of fraud. Exactly. Because if it was just a scanned ID, You looked at it, and yes, there's certain checks and balances, but there's also human error involved. And knowing people on the other side of the screen is processing hundreds, if not thousands of applications a month. And you sit there with paper after paper after paper, and the system is there to make it easier for you, so that the technology provides you an answer, not a human. And we all get tired. We all have an off day, or there's too much work pressure, and we miss that 1 or 2 or 3, which can cost us hundreds of thousands of rands if you have to go through a litigation process. And then the product that was brought to market last year, and which I'm extremely excited about, you can see it, is verified online bank statements. And that is bringing 2 incredible technologies together. That's the ID Biometrics and the ability to pull bank statements directly from the bank. And of course, we love analytics, so we run a bit of analytics on that. But all of a sudden, we're bringing these 2 worlds together, and it is providing that in a efficient, affordable, accessible format to our client base to reduce human error, to reduce the time that it consumes to go through. Please, can you attach the back end of your ID? Please, can you scan it better? And it takes time away from core business. Finding tenants, finding buyers, moving that along swiftly, quickly, converting that into a lease agreement. And that's ultimately what we're working towards. And I believe we are achieving that.
Yeah, well, to add to that, I think you've said it so well. I mean, in the sense of there are accountable institutions out there. Comcorp for many, many years in terms of financial institutions have been working with regards to compliance and authentication services with them to make sure that not the checkbox at first was being ticked. What we're finding, as you're saying, fraud's becoming smarter. The tools people who would like to defraud are becoming more sophisticated. So the tools we need to use to do good business also need to go up that curve, and as long as we're staying ahead of it, we're winning. And I think this is where people come together. This is where good businesses come together to say, look, we understand that FICA is about applying yourself to say what reasonable checks have you done. And I certainly think that if someone is sitting there trying to decipher whether the ABSA logo is really the ABSA logo and not something reproduced, I would like to see the person that's actually out there doing business using their time more effectively.
Exactly, yes.
And we should be doing what we're there for, not deciphering whether someone has given us all the pages or doctored it, and whether the pictures are actually who they say they are. Those are poor things to be dealing with at a stage when we actually extending or growing our businesses.
And we have the technology. That's the thing, is we although it's also the enemy, because fraudsters have access to technology, we have the technology and we have the innovation, and you combine the 2, and always just staying ahead of what's really happening. And the stories and Gregory from time to time come and share some of these I would like to say horrific stories that people go through, but the fraud that comes through and that we pick up, and that is usually after 4 or 5 or 6 checks that it's gone through, that it finally hits our legal team, and they're looking at it and say, wow. And these stories, I would love Gregory to share 1 or 2. The past couple of weeks has been made for some interesting news for us, but Gregory, kind of just give us an idea of what was one of the couple of recent ones that you've experienced.
So there's so many out there. It's hard to pick from one specifically, but I'll just almost correlate them all into one basic example, and that is you take a credit check, for example, that has been provided to a tenant, and they go and take and copy and paste better credit checks onto their credit check, and then the agency who's dealing with them is willing to accept a credit check provided by a tenant to them for the purposes of placing them in a property. And it is just the simplest way of getting around that is to always perform your own check and to always yourself use the systems that TPN has in place. Don't rely on the good faith and honesty of a tenant who's presenting you with documentation. The whole purpose of all of the products that we have here to present are to take that uncertainty out of the equation and to know for certain that the information you're getting is valid, verified from golden sources. It is the easiest thing in the world to do, to actually do your own checks. And we've been seeing lots of these fraudulent credit checks and lots of fraudulent bank statements as well. So as Voldy briefly touched on, I know he's absolutely visibly shaking to get to the point of verified online bank statements a little bit later on. But you also briefly touched on grey listing that has happened quite recently. Do you maybe want to go into a little bit more detail now of what exactly that grey listing is with the Financial Action Task Force and what we need to be looking out for in the future?
Greg, this is we hear the news and of course we all focus on our businesses and we focus on what we need to do day to day. And then from time to time you get these, and South Africans, we also a bit desensitized towards bad news at the moment. But we hear about this grey listing and then all the bankers talk about this grey listing and what it means. And effectively it means is that we have been flagged by an organization to have not complied with at least 11 regulations, of which 3 we've completely failed at. And there is, of course, grey listings and there's black listings within this financial task force. And what they're trying to identify here is to prevent the illegal flow of money for criminal purposes, and that includes the funding of terrorism. And again, if we look at our own world, how does it really affect us? And listening to a couple of podcasts with Jerry Maggs with the Investec bankers, they really brought it down to how does it really impact the economy? Immediate? No immediate impact. We've seen the rand deteriorate, and yes, we've got global recessions and we've got inflation and the US dollar strengthening. So in a way, it's slightly disguised. But if we don't fix this over the next 7 to 8 months, it's going to have bigger implications for bringing in funding to build new power stations, to build infrastructure. It becomes more expensive. But in there, they mentioned that the focus is not around financial institutions. The banks are very compliant. In South Africa, we know we've got a very robust banking system. Even during the 2011-16 economic crisis, our banks were highlighted as having good balance sheets, etc. But what they flagged is the sundry sectors around it that really makes for concern. And unfortunately, they've highlighted real estate as one, and how real estate is facilitating the illegal inflow and cleaning of money. And we can look at some cases, but I think there's what we want the viewers to take out here is that criminals are using real estate to clean money and for alternative purposes that is going against these acts and these regulations. Meaning that we have to put in certain measures to prevent it. And again, it is not a tick box exercise. It is that you've applied yourself and that you've gone through the necessary processes. And again, it's not about trying to give more work to a sector that is really already working very hard with a lot of regulations. It is to make sure that when you place a tenant or when you place a tenant in a landlord's property or a sale goes through, that there is the checks that needs to be done, and in such a way that you can confidently say, I'm not taking part of laundering money. I'm not taking part of facilitating terrorism. And that is where something like the ID biometrics come in, that you can say, this is a real person. And then this person that I'm engaging with is got the right credit behind it. And there's, of course, various other checks, and we're not going to go into those details right now, because it's just doing the necessary checks and looking at the documentation and relying on the technology to highlight that, hey guys, this doesn't make sense, is already taking steps forward. Now, Mauritius took 7 months to be de-grey listed, if that's even a word, but let's use it for now.
It is now,
de-grey listed. They took 7 months, but they've applied themselves because they knew if they remain on that list, and especially as a developing country that need the inflow of money, it is imperative that they get off that list, and they've achieved it. So it is very possible. It is about private sector, which we serve predominantly, to say, all right, guys, how do we ensure that as a sector we contribute to us getting removed from that list because we have foreign buyers?
So I've had these conversations about grey listing, and when I read articles about grey listing, I totally agree with you about having a look at it at a big picture. Look at our economy. Let's understand how it's going to impact us downstream. And when I speak of it, I go, what does this mean for me sitting here? Because I'm not a terrorist, and I'm not a person trying to defraud. And the person, just say, viewing the house that is up for rent, they're really nice.
Yeah.
They are not a terrorist. They even arrived with their granny. And they had a child that goes to that school, and you know what? When I chatted to them, they were amazing. They are not terrorists. So when we speak about grey listing, I think what happens is in our everyday experience, we don't necessarily see that impact, but it's there. And what you're saying is you need to plan for it. Where I'm sitting, I'm going, right now, the reality is that when an institution or regulator sees grey listing, they start creating laws. They start creating more compliance. And that means I need to do more. So in my business, I need to start doing more. It means I need to check more. It means I need to ask this person that possibly wants to rent the house for more information. I need to review more. What am I actually looking at? Is it right? Is it wrong? Suddenly I'm in this bog of a lot of documents and stuff that is about grey listing when I don't believe I or them are terrorists. So the reality is that what I'm feeling is a pressure of regulation and compliance. And the consequences of that means that somehow my business can be fined. I somehow am told your license is taken away. And instead of becoming a legal expert, instead of becoming an economist, what we've done is we've said, we understand that. And the solution lies in not trying to figure it out, but procuring the documents that will safeguard you in an easy way. And that is the day-to-day reality that I think us sitting here are advocating. We want those individuals that are listening to us right now to understand and use those tools and that information because of this downstream impact that they're feeling. And the connection is, I'm busy with a whole lot of things that frustrate me, and all I want to do is get someone a house. And we're saying this in between. These are all the solutions.
It's so well put, Shanaz, and I personally have been saying there's a huge amount of regulation in the property sector as well as the education sectors that we serve. It's a heavily regulated environment, and as this grey listing is the downstream, is all of a sudden you have more and more regulation, because if something doesn't work, just throw some more laws at it. And it makes it such a complex environment. And all of a sudden now we're going to do a couple of extra webinars with our legal team because we need to understand the new regulations when there's these tools and there's these solutions that we can plug in to solve the problem before we go and have another round of amendments and amendments and amendments. And there's apart from the bad news fatigue, I also think that there's regulation fatigue. There's definitely regulation fatigue, and it's to make things easier. And for that, we really, as TP and Credit Bureau, working with ComCorp, is really wanting to make it easier for our clients. And we've got a product that's coming up, and I'm not allowed to say yet what it is.
Of course you can.
I'm not allowed to say. But there's something coming up that will make it even easier for you to do the checks, so that you feel comfortable that your summation about the person with their granny and their kids and they go to great school is on point, and you can place them with a smile, because property is still one of our industry colleagues says that it's a belly to belly market. It's a relationship. You need to feel it, but now it's about feeling and proving that your feeling is right, or proving that your feeling is right and it's not the right tenant. And those are the type of things that we want to solve for our clients.
So something that's also important to note is obviously we're going to provide you with all of these tools to deal with your collection of documents and to take that headache away from you. But something that is important to realize that even though you have these documents, you still as a human being need to remain cognizant. You need to keep this at top of mind, and you need to have your eyes open to the fraud that could potentially be in front of you. Not just from a document point of view, but to other actions of prospective tenants. So we will now go into a little bit more detail about the documentation, and I want to just give you a case study of what we saw a couple of years ago. There was an expose which came out about a company that was in the middle of Johannesburg in the CBD, and they would, for a couple of R100, they would provide you with a fake ID, fake salary slips, they would provide you with fake bank statements, and you could also list them specifically as a reference that your agencies could phone to get good references for renting a property. And I think now, with all of the products that we've developed and with the help of ComCorp, we are now at a point where that sort of syndicate wouldn't be able to exist, because the documentation that can be provided from verified sources has now gone further than what they would be able to provide on a human-to-human level. So we had a lovely question come in from Lebo, which is going to assist us here, which is, how do we verify a bank statement? And so with that, I'm now going to introduce verified online bank statements. We have a short video which is going to be playing now, just to introduce you to this product that we've released to the market.
In today's online and accessible world, people are able to falsify bank statements, and identity theft is a very real problem. This is why TPN is proud to present verified online bank statements, where bank statements are requested directly from your client's bank and delivered to you on TPN's secure platform. This check allows you to verify the applicant's actual income, verify the applicant's actual expenditure, prevent identity and documentation fraud, and provides convenience to applicants. Typically, you would request the applicant to provide supporting documentation, but TPN now provides a solution that allows you to do a full identity verification with the latest biometric technology. This enables you to request their bank statements directly from the source. Let's get back to reality. Michelle, how do you do this on the TPN system?
Rowan, it's as easy as ticking a box. Step 1, enter your consumer details. Step 2, verify income directly with bank. So once you have completed the process, the applicant will receive an SMS asking him or her to verify biometrics as well as consent to their bank details being shared.
Log on to TPN Credit Bureau to verify your applicants today. Another simple process that provides better data to make better decisions.
Welcome back, everyone. While you were watching that video, we had a couple of questions coming through in the chat. And one of the questions was, how exactly is this solving the problem? Can we please put it in point form? So I'm going to throw to Valdu now a little bit, just to explain, in terms of this product now that we have released, how exactly does it help? How does it solve the problem?
So I love, here's the 5-6 steps, and usually during this webinar, whoever sits on the couch comes up with this great idea to say, we will put something together, and I will be that person today. We'll put something together to share with our viewers today, to say, these are the steps to make sure that you can do it. But I think firstly is to do an ID biometrics to ensure that the person that you are dealing with is real. and that they are alive and that it is not a fake copy. And then we touched on the verified online bank statements and seeing that TPN is an acronym, and as being part of the MRI group, which is also acronyms, I have to use an acronym, and we refer to it in the offices as VOBS, verified online bank statement. So VOBS is
We can consult on that.
we can consult on that. So VOBS is a product that I find incredibly powerful, not just from the information we get, and I want Shanaz, as the company that developed this product, to explain this a little bit more. But from a product service, it's really about getting in information, accurate information, processing it, giving you an affordability based on real empirical data, not on a bank statement. You take those, you combine it with a KYC certificate, and you've done an ID biometrics to get the verified online bank statements. And those are 3 critical documents when you have to look at FICA. So we're now saying from the credit bureau, you can get these 3 documents. And these 3 documents has gone through various processes. You are ensured that it came from the bank. We give you the affordability. And these bank statements can therefore be downloaded and filed if you need to, or it sits on the credit bureau. So when you go through an audit, you don't have to try and run around and email tenants that's in the property to try and get the bank statements. And that's one of the big concerns that some of our larger property owners are saying is when they do get audited and they say, where's the bank statements? All of a sudden, it is all hands on deck, and it's taking people away from their core business to then try and get bank statements from a tenant that is already in the premises. And they are not going to jump up and down to make your deadline. They're not going to do that. But to explain a little bit more about the verified online bank statements, I want to give it to Shanaz. They've worked so hard on this thing, and I think it's an incredible product. You know, I'm very excited about it. But just give us and our viewers a little bit more of how it works.
I'm going to start with a number, 13 million. And I'd like that to be my bank account, but sadly not. 13 million bank statements have gone through our exchange.
It's brilliant.
And that is testament to the value it's adding. That is a big number and growing every year. So when I hear a question like, how is this solving the problem? I want to almost take a step back. I want to say, what is the problem? What is your daily problem? And I like the consumer and the human to come through. And the problem is that we trust what people deliver to us because we are trustworthy. So therefore the person standing before us, if they have the image of trustworthiness, why doubt them? The very people that are your clients are there to build relationships. They read people, they want to believe the best in people, they grow relationships. However, their success is dependent on, are they working with the person who says that they are? And is the person who's stating they can afford whatever they're agreeing to, can they actually pay that? So what happened is somewhere along the line, it came along and said, we need to make sure you are who you are. It's nothing personal. I need to make sure who you are, and I need to cross-check your bank statements. So we do that. And somewhere along the line, another person came along and said, you know what? I can edit it because I've got access to Photoshop.
Exactly.
So it's like insurance. Until you walk into the airport car park and your car's not there, and you have that sinking feeling, it's that moment when you walk into a rental property or you place someone and something dire happens, or you are fined or held accountable as an accountable institution, that reality lands on you and your livelihood. So that is the problem. The problem we face is rising fraud. The problem we face is rising sophistication in how people are going about fraud. The problem is rising compliance that takes you away from your livelihood. So how are we solving it? We're solving it by saying, what would happen if you didn't need to ask the person for that information, but get it from source? So as we've done with biometrics, where we've gone direct to source and we match it to a picture.
Exactly.
So we can compare it. And guess what? The algorithm says your features are matched. Guess what? We've got innovation that says if it is tampered with and there is a tongue depressor with a picture, how do we pick that up? Because people would go to those lens. Now extend that to bank statements, to pay slips, to these type of aggregated information where someone needs to provide it. And that's where we play. That's Comcorp's bread and butter, our passion. So why is verified bank statements so amazing? It has been, I take a book out of the credit bureaus and the bank environment where they did it in the early 80s with reciprocity and created bureaus. Where we stand right now is saying we've got a document exchange association. So in 2011, Comcorp spoke to the banks and they said, imagine a world where people provided permission that you could transfer bank statements from the bank to the provider that was vetting you without interception. That meant all of the vendors in this process are not left exposed. And voila, we have that direct to source. And that is why verified online bank statements becomes so important in today. 13 million transactions later, it's not only the banks and financial institutions, it's all those people the regulations are touching to say, when you check for affordability, like National Credit Regulator, we're not talking about expenses, we're talking about affordability, we're talking about responsible lending, we're talking about, are you signing a document with an individual that actually can commit to paying this, or are they going to be compromised? How are you party to that? Those are the problems you're solving. So you don't need to check whether the document is false. You don't need to check if the document is sequential. You don't need to check and wait. Guys, how long do we wait for people to come back with the missing page number 4 because it's not there?
And it becomes an email war, and I didn't get it, and it sits in your junk mail, and its file is too big.
So the problems are solved. And obviously people then ask, wait a moment, how much is that going to cost me? Because I've got to get that. The point is, what we have is we've got the balance of not having the figure of how much time, effort, and loss it's costing you on the other side. So people are looking at one side of the equation instead of the other. And that's why when I say after 13 million transactions, it is tried and tested that it is worth it.
And
so while we're just on this, we've got a lot of questions that are coming through at the moment along the lines of how this works from a practical perspective. So when you run this check on your prospective tenant, for example, I'm going to ask this to Valdu, how long does it generally take to get that credit check back with the verified online bank statement involved? How long does it wait for the person to do the biometric check? From a practical point of view, does this extend your time period that you're now dealing with a check?
So I don't know the exact amount of seconds, and we're talking about seconds here, where you conduct the ID biometrics. The individual receives the SMS almost immediately. They conduct, through a link, they conduct a liveliness check, and yes, it says look up or look left or look right to make sure that this person has got movement. And there's technology and there's technology. You know, you get cars and you get cars. And the same applies with technology, and the Curata one is extremely accurate to say it's not just static. So I'm digressing. So if we look then, as soon as that verification is done, that information is then pulled through. We then go through Comcorp, and we then the bank statements are requested. It goes into the credit bureau. We run our analytics, and as we saw in the introductory video, it gives you actual expenditure, actual income. It gives you potential payday, and knowing that not everyone is salaried, There's people that receive weekly or commission, but it gives you an approximate time. And it also provides you the bank statements. And as I said, we talk about seconds here.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Near
It's
instantaneous.
very quick. So you don't
As soon
have
as
to
the check
sit
is
there.
done,
I
yeah.
think the only real challenge here is just to make sure that you get your prospective tenant or applicant to do that check as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So let me talk about time. When we're talking about seconds, I'm going to ask everyone, how long does it take you to stand up, go to a photostating machine,
Exactly.
photostat or to email and get it? It's a fraction of that. And on top of it is verified. So we're not even adding the time on that it takes you to inspect and compare, which is the manual process. So we certainly have worked very hard at making sure that it is seamless, because when we say it's frictionless, we want to create that ease and replace it with you waiting.
And to add on, it's also considering and how many times you've applied for a bond, or you applied for extended credit, and you receive this pack of documents, and you have to go and fill in how much are you spending on groceries, on insurance, and at that point you can't remember, and also you're not going to go through all your bank statements, so you kind of make up a number, and that's then sent through to the bank or not just the banks, most credit applicants, to say, can you afford it? So it's not just a time saving from a client or requester side, it's also a time saver from someone that is applying. And by showing the technology, it shows your sophistication and saying, hang on, these guys know what they're doing. So if I am a fraudster or I am a criminal, I'm just not going to partake even in this process because I'm at risk here.
Exactly. So I think our formal portion of our presentation is done. So we're just going to neatly roll into the Q&A, because I'm getting a lot of questions coming through at the moment.
Pick me.
The first question that I'm going to actually ask to myself.
Oh.
There are a lot of
we can relax and ask.
Exactly. There's a lot of people asking the same question, and which is, how do you get consent? Do you need consent from this? And the answer is simply, yes, you do need consent from this. And this is where your ID biometrics is built into it. Also, the TPN application forms have been updated. So if you are a current lease pack subscriber, go into your lease pack now, go and download the updated application form. That will contain a written consent, but then in addition, by performing your selfie check, that also builds in the consent that has been obtained from to receive those bank statements, which do contain sensitive information. We're all entrusted as agencies to care for that information through POPI. So you can do it with the consent of the person on the other end of the line.
And that's also why you use a credit bureau, and why we get audited every year, and we have to make sure that we've got regulations, we've got the necessary checks and balances in place, is to ensure that what we deliver to you is legal and is compliant and has gone through the necessary checks. So the biometrics, by merely performing it, it gives consent for us to go and get the bank statements and provide them to you in a consumable format, but also in a format that you can keep to ensure you comply with FICA.
Exactly. So then,
could I add something
of course
to
you can,
that?
please.
So part of consent and part of POPI is also about how we maintain our documentation. And that's a growing problem, especially with manual processes. So from that perspective, we must understand the amount of effort and how we open ourselves up to by, I'm rushing out to get my kids, and you've left someone's documents, someone's ID, something that they dropped off right there on your table. And it takes one small little mistake like that to open you up to risk. Exactly. Or one client to raise that. And so when you have it electronically, which is the benefit, you've got it in a safe place, and it's about then saying, after 3 months, after 6 months, after 3 years, I will purge, given the fact that it isn't relevant. It makes processing, it makes maintenance, it makes storage, and it makes your risk completely decrease. I mean, these are the practicalities. How many storerooms do we need, and how many times do we need to bring shredders in? I mean, these are things that you get from a small organization to a big one.
Irrespective, yes.
So even though it's an adjustment for people to get onto digital platforms, it is the way that's going to make everything that's been placed onto them that much easier.
One of the questions that is coming through quite substantially is when you're doing this ID biometric check, the photograph that it checks against. A lot of people are saying that, oh no, it can only be done if you don't have a smart card, then it completely ruins it. I personally know that this is not the case, because when I did my most recent biometric check, I'll go into that a little bit later, but Shanaz, where other these sources, what other photographs can appear other than your ID smart card?
So it is when we are talking about the liveness check, that is going direct to source. So where the National Population Register has any pictures that you have taken from a government passport, ID, smart card, all of those various different sources, and you'd be surprised at how many places you're actually getting verified from a government or compliance perspective from that. So you're going, I don't have a smart card, having forgotten that perhaps you've had a passport or something of that nature done and you've submitted it to a government institution. So your National Population Register is going to be able to verify from that perspective. But and very interesting thing that we've also been exceptionally successful at is with courier services. And that is static. So we do a comparison, so someone can come along and, for instance, provide us with a picture, and that picture, for instance, does do the comparison from picture to picture because you've got the individual in front of you. So CCD Couriers does use for the delivery of bank cards, and we see the cases and the use cases of how we're using facial features in many different ways. So the sources of that are varied. At the end of the day, what we need to know is that the person you are looking at has a picture, and that picture is associated with an identity, and they are being matched. And if they don't match facial feature wise and the algorithm, it gets picked up.
Yeah, and just to personally explain how good this software is, the photograph when I did this on myself in testing was my photograph from my green ID book, which was taken when I was 15 or 16 years old. I had a schoolboy haircut and I wasn't capable of growing facial hair.
I say there was no beard, right?
There was no beard. There was a much worse haircut, and it pulled through, and it was 20 kilos ago. So they managed to, when I did my check with facial hair, with a changed haircut, with many years down the line, it managed to pick up versus that old picture that I was the same person through the biometric check. This is very, very sophisticated, advanced software, and is very, very good at getting a match.
Yes, I've spoken to a number of people, obviously also in the retail space, this is being used. And what's happened is that when someone was querying this, exactly that. I have an 18-year-old and this person is now 43. How could you have matched? And it's really the complex algorithm. So you've got people that are really innovating and keeping ahead of the curve, and we're bringing that to you.
Yes, and just, we do get clients phoning in saying, something as simple as just a background and a bit of lighting. It's with any kind of photo. Make sure that those basics are right, and it will process immediately. It's usually when someone stands and the sun is directly from them and the camera is only just this outline, it's a shadow. It's not going to work. But that is hopefully common sense, that people say, you know what, if I need to do this, just make sure that it's well. You can see,
No, but we work with all of our clients. So, for instance, there's an organization that is now doing what we call reverse billing, due to the fact that when they are actually taking pictures, some of the individuals, they say, I don't have data. So given the losses and the effectiveness of the technology, they are like, this is costing us less just to provide that cross-check to make sure that we are covered. So, that is a solution. We walk that journey with them to understand what they need to do. And I don't think most people get that 95%, here we go, we are getting that coverage. Where you are not, the point is you have a trusted partner to work with you to figure it out.
Exactly. And when we're talking about the cost now, there's a lot of people saying that they're very excited by this product, but they want to know how much it costs. Will it be included in our normal check? Will it be an added extra that needs to be paid for extra? So I think Valdu, as from sales, you can you can tell us exactly how much it's going to cost.
So you can do the ID Biometrics as a standalone, and that's I think 27 rands. Sorry, you can do. I'm getting there.
Very
the ID Biometrics you can do as a standalone, and then the verified online bank statements. It's a combination of a ID Biometrics and the verified online bank statements, and that is 82 rand. And the help desk people will keep me honest here on what those costs are. It is not part of the TPN rent check. And that's for various reasons. Some of our clients want to do rent checks every single year on tenants, and these they would perform when only a new tenant moves in. But it is really affordable to look at it and say, if I combine these checks and I bring them together versus the amount of emails, the amount of communications, the frustration, it really becomes a very cost-effective way to check them. And now we're talking about storage sits on the bureau. You don't have to print it. It's the printing cost. It's the shredding cost. It is scrutinizing someone that sends you through 30 pages of bank statements. Are you going to go line for line? I don't do that. We give you the summary for it.
We've had this discussion, and it was, Valdu, how long does it take a person? There's an administrator in an office getting all of the supporting documentation for ultimately the person that's client facing. She calls, goes, I'm missing 2 pages. Can you please ask your client to get the 2 pages that are missing? And, you know, I'm going, if someone really had to spend time
calculating it,
adding all of that, I think we'd be significantly surprised at how much. And then at the end, 3 days later, the individual says, but you've taken too long, I've gone with that person. And now you've even got a loss on your hands. So I think these things happen when we look at the bottom line and we go, why are we taking so much effort with so little return? And I think it's these invisible activities that we are not accounting for. So I'm not saying everyone go there and start counting your cents. I'm just saying take a step back. Think about all of those micro activities that we don't cost. And I can almost guarantee you if you did, you'd be surprised.
I can't go into the detail. It was a story that I wanted to tell earlier about time saving. I was watching a documentary around the value of the dishwasher, and you know, the reasons why people buy it. And 61% said that they're buying it because it's time saving. And the whole documentary, I know it's very nerdy of me, goes into the detail around packing the dishwasher, looking at making sure you've got the right detergent, you know, the engineering that goes into it and the cost that goes into it. And at the end, they did an actual time comparison. And yes, a dishwasher can save you up to 35% of your dishwashing or cleaning time. Yes, it is an expensive outlay. Yes, there is additional cost of repairs. Yes, there's all these things that at the onset you think it's big, but if you calculate it over the long period, and that's what why I wanted to raise it, is exactly what you're saying here, is we don't necessarily look at all the other costs that's involved, not just opportunity costs, the actual time and resources that we have someone sitting there waiting for emails, waiting for confirmation.
I'm going to challenge you to change your dishwasher story to a washing machine story and say, look at how we solve your money laundering problems, guys. This is how we're solving it. You don't need to put the money in the washing machine. We're saving you.
We're saving you.
So, yeah. My
Remember
quirky
that
jokes.
one. I know, I like the
my
quirky
quirky
jokes.
Just before we get into our last couple of questions, please remember in the chat, the feedback form will be posted. Please make sure that you fill out those feedback forms, give us some feedback on what you want to hear about next. And also those forms will be there to get your unverified CPD points. So please make sure you fill out those forms before you leave the session a little bit later when we finish with our last couple of questions. The next question that's been coming through a fair bit is these bank statement verifications. Do they also extend to juristic entities, or is it just private individuals at the moment?
So at this point in time, we are doing private individuals, and obviously it extends to how we're going to obviously get consent. Most of it is based on responsible lending. We need to make sure that we cover all of the various different individuals. And so I'm going to stop there. However, it's constantly evolving. And we need to make sure that we are, I mean, if we look at the property, even the rental side, even if you are verifying your PTY, at the end of the day, we know that you follow where the money goes. And
Exactly.
ultimately, the people that are standing sureties ultimately end up being directors, and they end up being individuals. So as much as we stop at the corporate entity, many of the times we actually are following it to the individual. So the logical place to start is with individuals and then scale from there. I mean, you know, testament, when you need to take legal action, how do you follow the trail?
No, exactly.
Exactly, and that's why in your TPN you have your SIPC checks to make sure
Correct.
that you've got your directorships, etc., all attached to that. So from that perspective, I'm quite confident about this point and the value it would add, and move from there.
And we grow and innovate listening to our clients. And we know that that is a question, and we've been having conversations. And we say having conversations, it's really about how do we do this? How do we get there? It's not just, okay, it's a nice idea. It's how do we do this? And it is a process, because as people can imagine, let's say you do quite a large PTY limited, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pages of bank statements that needs to be processed.
Absolutely.
So it's finding the right solution, making sure that it works well.
A company has audited financial statements.
On the other hand, that's also true. Yeah.
So you know, at the end of the day, you've got other documentation an individual doesn't have. So you've got your financial statements, which provide the summaries for that. You've got management accounts that provide the summaries of that, and that's all fantastic coming from accountants. But ultimately, I've also said, when I was obviously advising certain accountable institutions, that when you've got a small PTY or sole proprietor, all of these things, you need to follow who your surety is, who are these directors, how, because a company can go into deregistration, right? So the point is, you need to look at it, and people need to understand that an individual doesn't have financial statements. So that's why we ask for those bank statements. How are we going to hold them liable? How are they affordable? And so from that perspective, when I say that we're comfortable with the fact that it will give the level of assurance, and we look at it holistically about the risks and what other information we have, we cover all the bases, right?
The next question that comes through is, what happens if a prospective tenant has multiple bank accounts? Does this get taken into account by the tool? And I think that Voldu quite well pointed out that you can do this check multiple times, and it is a standalone check. So when you're doing your initial check, I would recommend that the account that receives the salary into it, your main transactional account, that be the account that you deal with primarily when you're dealing with the check. But if you have other multiple accounts that are coming through, there's nothing to stop you doing an additional biometric check on an additional account to verify that that account does also belong to the person that says it is.
Yeah, there's account verification options within the credit bureau, but as Greg points out, we need to understand, can you afford it? And that's when a applicant or a prospective client steps forward and say, I'm going to give you my best account, or here's my savings account, but here's also my check account, and here's an investment account. So just to paint a fuller picture, and that is why it's not bundled up into rent check, because you're going to do multiple as well, to ensure that you get the right information.
So it's quite interesting in the history. I mean, I know the practicalities. I have, so for instance, someone will say, I have my account where my savings are, or my retrenchment package was placed. So I can afford that deposit. If anything happens, I can afford it. And so it becomes about confirming that representation. And it's not about doubting, sometimes the statement is more than 3 months, etc. So my point is that people have multiple accounts and provide those as an assurance to anyone that's signing a lease or otherwise, to say, you can trust me in the property. And so I think for me, the message is, are we asking the questions? So when someone represents, we go, if we need to debit your account, is this the primary account you would debit? If this is your savings account, out of which account would you be paying your deposit? These are ways we can interact at a relationship, which is the strength of the people listening. These are the relationship questions. Once you elicit that, you know, I've got 3 bank accounts. Now you make a choice.
It's an informed decision, and that is why we have these webinars, is to say, these are the questions you need to ask. These are the tools to make sure that you get answers to those questions. And then there's all these other benefits that sit there to make sure that it's compliant, it is being checked. There's been checks and balances that you don't have to sit with, okay, I have to ask one question but need to do 30 actions. No, you have to ask the question. And that's why we continue doing these webinars and having great guests like Shanaz joining us here so that we answer these questions. What are the things that you need to ask and check for? And I think one of the big things is if someone provides you with a bank statement and they go through the process, they are already proving to you that they are interested, they are committed, and they are willing to share that information with you. They've got nothing to hide, which already raises a good green flag for you.
And on that note, thank you very much, Valdu. Thank you very much, Fanaz, for joining us in the studio today. If for whatever reason your question wasn't answered, please feel free to email legal@tpn.co.za, or alternatively for systems-based questions, email helpdesk@tpn.co.za, and we'll do our best to answer your questions there. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone at home for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next webinar.
In today's online and accessible world, people are able to falsify bank statements, and identity theft is a very real problem. This is why TPN is proud to present verified online bank statements, where bank statements are requested directly from your client's bank and delivered to you on TPN's secure platform. This check allows you to verify the applicant's actual income, verify the applicant's actual expenditure, prevent identity and documentation fraud, and provides convenience to applicants. Typically, you would request the applicant to provide supporting documentation, but TPN now provides a solution that allows you to do a full identity verification with the latest biometric technology. This enables you to request their bank statements directly from the source. Let's get back to reality. Michelle, how do you do this on the TPN system?
Rowan, it's as easy as ticking a box. Step 1, enter your consumer details. Step 2, verify income directly with bank. So once you have completed the process, the applicant will receive an SMS asking him or her to verify biometrics as well as consent to their bank details being shared.
Log on to TPN Credit Bureau to verify your applicants today. Another simple process that provides better data to make better decisions.